Almost everything you want to learn, do, or teach or train others on can be broken down into one of 5 types of frameworks, and maybe a 6th hybrid one. If you're doing any type of publishing, from writing a book to coming up with helpful YouTube video ideas or podcast episodes, instead of first going, what kind of content ideas can I come up with? Content, what's my content? Which can often result in forgettable ideas, forgettable content. If you were to figure out the framework behind your process or behind your idea first, life will get so much easier, because the book or the YouTube video, whatever, will in essence write itself. To be clear on what a framework is, it's the organization of ideas in a way that gives your thinking or your problem solving or your next action that you need to take better structure. I always like to say that a framework is giving the work you need to do a frame, or the work your client or the student you're teaching needs to do a frame. So in essence, it becomes this scaffolding that you need in order to think clearly, to solve a problem, or to take strategic action. Let's take a few common scenarios. Maybe you're reading a nonfiction book trying to gain some insight, or learning a new language. Perhaps you're analyzing the different assets and facets of like a problem so you can make an informed decision. Maybe you're trying to cook a complex meal for the first time. Yes, that's a fork and a knife there. Do not make fun of the drawing skills. Or maybe you're trying to decide how you can make more money in your business. You are going to come across or need to develop one of these 5 frameworks in order to give what you're trying to learn or do or solve for better organization, or to give yourself clearer thinking, or the best chance of reaching your goal, the best chance of teaching someone else to reach the goal. First up, structural frameworks. These are ones where you define the essential elements a person must know or build or even assemble in order to accomplish something important. Okay, so we're back to learning the language. A person might have a program that kind of goes, hey, you need a certain base level cultural context of the origins of the language, who speaks it, etc. You're also going to need, this certain group of nouns and vocab to function. You're also going to need this certain group of verbs and their conjugation, You're also going to need X, Y, Z. And then if you top that all off with sentence structure, which varies between languages, you're 80%, there. You're 80% fluent. You're good to go. An example of a structural framework out in the wild, in real life, is the Right Brain Business Plan and the book, The Right Brain Business Plan by Jennifer Lee. So this is saying, you need these 5 parts in your business plan. You need these 8 parts. If you only have these 7, the Right Brain Business Plan is not complete, or however many parts it is. You get the point. So structural frameworks are kind of like, what are the essential parts I've noticed must be in place in order to create this desired transformation? That's what you're answering. And you might also, to make your framework more nuanced, or even if you're building one to teach yourself something, you're building one as you're learning a language, then you're answering questions like, what am I leaving out on purpose, right? It's not all elements. It's not every thing you can think of to fit in this structure. What are you leaving out on purpose? Do some of these things actually make sense grouped under specific categories or labels? Because maybe it is getting to the point where it's like, I think these 20 things belong in the structure. Well, can we group them under 5 things or something like that? Are there elements that I need or recommend that others usually don't? That's going to be where your system differs a lot from other people's, right? What shapes or structure would these elements take on if they had a visual or tangible form that can kind of help somebody imagine the structure and have it hold more concrete whatever in their mind, The second type of framework, sequential frameworks, okay? This is where you share a specific order of operations or moves on the path to transformation. So, again, learning the language, it might be like, my special program to get people there fast is I have them learn these specific 1,000 vocab words in Spanish. Then we're going to do present tense and conjugation of verbs. Then I have people learn these specific 2,000 words, and then we do irregular verb, and then I have them learn these 3,000 words, and then past tense and future tense, and you are functional, you are good to go, or something like this, right? An example of a sequential framework out in the wild is probably Tiffany Alice's book, Get Good with Money, 10 Simple Steps to Becoming Financially Whole. And so in the book, Tiffany's like, do this and you'll be 10% whole. Do this and you'll be 20% whole. And it goes in order, and it's not like you would, skip on over to 50% whole before doing the things that come before it, right? So with sequential frameworks, I think it's kind of like the question is there an essential or preferred order, right? And why are you putting it in that order? Does one action or element depend on another one happening first? What is the less than ideal outcome that would transpire if you do these things out of order? Are there elements or moves you needed to make when you first learned how to do this thing, or ones that you now recommend that most people don't include on their checklist or roadmap? Again, that's where the differentiation starts to come in. The third type of framework, hierarchical. This is where you express the levels of development or fluency or value that something can reach, all right? So we could imagine like a ladder that is like on the bottom rung of this ladder, if you're learning a language, you have survival skills. You can maybe ask for directions, you can order food, etc. On a rung up from that, you have social skills. You can converse with locals for a bit, not too long, don't get too complicated, but you're there, right? But then maybe you would have professional skills on the next ladder rung. So you could hold a job, maybe at least just, basic amount of speaking needed on this job or whatever, but you can hold a job in the language. And then there might be the creative ladder rung where you can do storytelling, you can write amazing literature, all of that. So you can do the darn thing if you are on that creative level, right? An example of a hierarchical framework out in the wild is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That is, says, okay, we need to fill physiological needs, air, water, food first, and then safety needs, and then love and belonging, and then blah, 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 blah as a human. With hierarchical frameworks, I think the question you're asking is, what are the planes or levels that entities can operate at or exist on inside this goal? Are there both ideal states and less than ideal states possible? Because then, that can kind of speak to hierarchy. Do the different states hold different value? Does the most ideal state come only after you create or implement the other states? I think those are all good questions to ask. The next type of framework is discretional, okay? This is where you provide a limited, very smart, and curated set of options for a person to choose from so that overwhelm and infinite possibilities are narrowed down or prevented entirely. So, for example, this might be we have basic language understanding, and now there are kind of little supercharged things that you can do for your language, or you can pick a track now. Do you want to go down the academic track because you're going to be reading lit or critiquing work in this language? Do you want to go down the professional track where you learn how to, maybe give presentations or negotiate or whatever in this language? Do you want to go down the slang track, right? The cool kid track, so that you can sound hip, which you do not sound hip when you say the word sound hip. But anyway, an example of this framework operating out, or this type of framework operating out in the wild, is BCG, Boston Consulting Group's growth share matrix, right? And so it's like, hey, if you have, if a product has low growth, but it has high market share, that's a cash cow. If it has high growth and high market share, that is a star product. If it has this, that, and so it helps you understand, literally on their site, it says the growth share matrix is a portfolio management framework that helps companies decide how to prioritize their different businesses by their degree of profitability, right? So it's limited. These are smart, curated options, and you even kind of learn a little something potentially about business by just knowing the options. Discretional frameworks, I think that's the message, is you can choose to do one or more of these things, but probably not all of them. So you might ask yourself, are there multiple paths to choose that aren't all equal? To be smart and focused, can a person really only select one or two options, items, ways out of a number of options? Do the options themselves help me or help a person understand the scope of the goal or the design of an ideal transformation better? All right, elemental frameworks. This is where you provide a library, a spice rack, a toolbox of elements that you or the person can focus on or use in different combos for different results, okay? So, for example, you might have this cultural idioms library or something like that, right? Where, you know, do you want weather idioms? Do you want relationship idioms? Do you want sports idioms? Whatever it may be inside this language. So the person can kind of like log in, grab and practice the ones that they most need in that moment and keep it moving. An example of this type of framework out in the wild is Clifton's Strengths 34, where they're like, hey, there are these 34 strengths that we all hold at different levels. And once you know what your top ones are, you can maybe choose to focus on them. You can maybe choose to focus on the ones that are like right under your top and bolster them up. You can choose to go all the way to the ones that are on the bottom or you know you're least strong in, and maybe learn, okay, I'm going to delegate these things or hire, you know, somebody who can help with these things, or I'm going to focus on improving these things, whatever it may be, okay? Elemental frameworks, I think the message is like, hey, all these things exist, like the periodic table, right? All these things exist. You can focus on using or combining or gaining fluency on different ones at different times. You can create entirely new combinations. Like when we think about a spice rack, right? You have these vegetables, and if you have 100 different spices, then there's bajillion ways to flavor these vegetables, right? So when creating an elemental framework, you might want to ask yourself, are there elements a person can combine together to create something new? Are these elements things that a person can and will choose many of over time, or can and will choose which ones to focus on over time? Then lastly, our sixth kind of category, hybrid frameworks. This is when you combine multiple of the 5 types we just discussed into one lesson or resource. I think a program that I have on publishing a required reading book really is a good example of this, because it has its overall roadmap and checkpoints. But for example, one of the moves inside that roadmap requires you to choose the type of thought leadership book that you're going to publish. So this is a discretional framework, whether you're going to create a playbook or you're going to create this type of how-to book or whatever it is, right? Another one of the moves that I have inside the overall roadmap helps you set up a 3-day market test. So this is a sequential framework of different things that you do in a specific order in order to kind of test your topic before committing to it and the scope of your topic. Okay, so those are the 5 types and a hybrid of frameworks that you might use to learn something better and also teach something better. So structural frameworks are like, what are the essential elements? Sequential frameworks, what's the order of operations? Hierarchical frameworks, it's like, there's levels to this. Discretional frameworks are like, hey, use your best judgment. And elemental frameworks are like, which tools will you use today? So without a frame, ideas feel scattered. When you give them a frame or a framework, they're now teachable, they're more actionable, the idea is more manageable, and you give a person a sense of like, I can do this. So I have a practice for you to get more comfortable with noticing frameworks and to get better at building your own. All right, so with the next nonfiction book you read, first of all, read it, and or if you do audio, listen to it. Then do this kind of like quote unquote zoom out, where you are trying to understand what is the actual organization of this book. And you can test your knowledge or understanding of that organization with the 1-sheet or 5-minute test. So try to lay out this entire book on 1 sheet of paper, or if you need to do audio, do like a 5-minute kind of summary or almost lesson style summary of the book. When I do it, I do one sheet of paper, and I'm not going to lie, I cheat and kind of do a poster board sometimes because I really want to map it out. But the thing that you're looking for in this one sheet or 5-minute summary is, have you identified the key organization of this book and the central ideas inside of it? And don't chapter cheat. This should not just be a list of the chapters of the book. Even if the book is mainly a sequential type of, framework, still find different ways to explain the central ideas than just listing out the chapters, okay? As you do this, make sure you identify the key frameworks in the book. Maybe not every single framework if there are like 100, but what are the key frameworks? And you can use what we just went through, out of sequential and hierarchical, etc. What are the key frameworks inside the book? And then the last and most important move to make is to reorg. So maybe on a new sheet of paper or with a new 5-minute summary, reorganize the book conceptually to make better sense for your brain and the way you operate. So you're taking the author's wonderful points, whatever it may be. Actually, the book does not even need to be an amazing book. It just needs to have some type of organization and some type of frameworks. So then you reorganize it for, if I was going to go all over all of this again, or if I wanted to really, really learn this, what order would I put things in? How would I make things make more sense? And introduce some new frameworks or slightly modify the frameworks. This is not to publish this anywhere or, violate the author's copyright or anything like that. It's to get used to thinking and teaching in frameworks. To briefly illustrate this process, I'm going to use cookbooks as an example. So if you got a cookbook and it had 100 recipes in it and it was just in alphabetical order, that is one way to organize them. But you could instead go, okay, yeah, very basic. I'll do breakfast, lunches, dinners, desserts, and beverages and whatever, right? Sauces. Another way you could go is like, okay, by time it takes to make these meals. Another way you could go is are the ingredients very easy to find and you can find them at your local grocery store if you hopefully have one near you, or do you have to order special items off the internet or go far away to get these ingredients? Another one would be that, like, okay, chicken and certain types of meats. This is a vegan trying to figure this out. Then, fish dishes, what's it called? Seafood dishes, and then right? So this is just one example of how this is a very, very basic example of how you might take one set organization, kind of zoom out and then start to move it and go, you know what, it would work better for me if this cookbook was organized by things that take less time or things that were better for date night versus family versus whatever, right? So figure out the new organization that you might prefer. That's the exercise. So yeah, try reading your next book that way and notice how much faster you absorb and retain ideas. It's going to improve your comprehension, and it's going to teach you really to organize ideas in ways that fit your life, or you're starting to think about, like, if you manage a team, organizing ideas in ways that benefit your team, or if you manage clients, or your business has a number of different clients, etc., etc., etc. When you practice noticing frameworks and kind of breaking them down, it's almost like taking a mechanical object or something apart and then rebuilding it. And perhaps when you rebuild it, you actually build it in a way that works better for you, right? You're getting so much better at creating your own frameworks and better thinking for yourself from scratch when you practice this. Thinking and teaching in frameworks makes you a sharper learner, a clearer communicator, and I believe a better leader or a coach or creative. So did you notice the main lesson in this video was a discretionary framework? I was trying to help you choose between different ways that you can organize information in your head when you're trying to learn or teach something. So discretionary, at your discretion, which one fits, right? Then at the end, I gave you an exercise in the form of a sequential framework. Read the book, do this, right? So if you're interested, I will make more videos like this soon that go in even more depth on structuring what you know and what you've experienced into helpful frameworks. This is how I've been teaching in-person classes for years. online courses for even more years, and writing books for the last dozen years or so. So if you want to let me know that you want more like this, maybe subscribe, maybe like this video, maybe leave a comment, let me know how you've been using frameworks or which one you might try to structure your ideas into soon. I need a catchy sign off. Frameworks. Think better. Teach better. Frameworks come first. I can't even. It's okay. We'll workshop it.